Move over college basketball. We are in for some madness in the month of March. We'll take a look at the Minnesota Wild's March schedule, the February player of the month, and some crazy predictions for what should be a memorable March for the Minnesota Wild, or at least a frantic one. We'll discuss on today's episode of Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, this is Brandon Duham, and this is Locked on Wild.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, as always, for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, Zach Zeman is back to help us go through the March schedule, which should be a crazy one for the Minnesota Wild, with them battling to the end with a couple of other teams for a Western Conference playoff spot. We'll hand out the Player of the Month for February, some worthy candidates this month, and some predictions, because turns out we did pretty good on the February predictions. So we will throw a few out for the month of March as well. My name, of course, is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, credentialed Wild media member, joined by my good friend Zach Zeman for today's show. Zach, how are things going?
It's good. It's good to be back. What a month. I think this month of February was very exceeding of a lot of expectations. You know, we talked about how pivotal it was. Well, now March is more pivotal than February. But, I mean, when you see teams in the calendar like Vancouver and Edmonton, and you go out there and win dominantly, I guess. I mean, hopefully 10 goals is enough to beat first place Vancouver. And then you go into Edmonton and do the same thing. You shut down McDavid. Not really Draisaitl that much, but we all know who they are on the power play. Anyway, this month was huge. You saw a lot of wins, a lot of shocking events. I think it was definitely a lot of like weird stuff going on. And I think that, it kind of just sums up the Wild season. It's been a lot this year, and coming off of that loss to Carolina, last night, as of the day we're recording this podcast, it's easy to hold on to losses like that. But I mean, as a month in whole, I think it was a very successful month. This team is back in that race. You're looking at teams like St. Louis, Los Angeles is holding it, and there's a lot of like, who's going to make moves now? It's getting to that time. The trade deadline's upon us. We got scenes of like, well, is Fleury going to be moved? What move is this? What moves are this team going to make? And we'll talk about that later, but it's getting down to that crucial point of the season. Obviously, March Madness. What a great wait! Don't trademark me on that. Or are we gonna get copyrighted on Locked on Wild? Well, never mind. Hopefully, they didn't trademark that.
We can use it when talking about the tournament specifically. Yeah. I just kind of tongue in cheek that because as somebody that works in the radio industry for my regular job, we get emails about that all the time at this part of the year because you cannot use that in advertisements. Yeah. And so like we can talk about it. We're doing a sports show. We can mention the NCAA tournament, but you can't use it in ads.
Yeah,
can't use it in anything like that. So
yeah, we're good here. So I think that the funniest one is like the big game for the Super Bowl. And in the month of March, there are a lot of big games. This is crucial. You can kind of tie in both trademarks. Hopefully we don't get torn down here. No, but hey, the month of March is huge. A ton of central opponents. This is where it matters. Everybody we play, the Wild player, are in the West. This is where the points matter. And, you go, I mean, like I said, you hold on to losses to, Carolina and Buffalo, but those ones are kind of easy to get swept under the rug. We're moving into a month where every game is crucial. You see teams like St. Louis 3 times, Nashville once, the Avs, the Coyotes, the Sharks. And, it's just, man, this is it. If the Wild really want to make a push to the playoffs, this is the month where you really got to prove to yourself. Maybe make a move or two if you really are down to make the playoffs. But, hey, you got to get there first. And I think that this month is probably the biggest month of the season. I think it always is when it comes down to playoff push. But, yeah, we got a big one ahead of us.
The Wild do not play anyone other than Western Conference opponents here in March. And so it is a make your hay month for the Minnesota Wild. And the month of February featured, I think, just a good level of overall play for this Wild team. Now, obviously, they lost to Carolina, and I will say, full disclosure, we are recording this before the Nashville game, so there's technically 1 month, 1 game left in the month of February. And so it just is more of the same. Like, these are all critical games. Got to find ways to win to keep yourself within striking distance. But I think a large part as to why the team was able to be successful in February and to stay in striking distance is because of the creation of the new team killer line in Kirill Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson Ek, and Matt Boldy. Zach, if I may, in the month of February, 10 games for Kirill Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson Ek, and Matt Boldy. They all have 7 goals. Kaprizov has 11 assists. Eriksson Ek has 8 assists. Matt Boldy has 7 assists. 18, 15, 14 points for those 3. They have been carrying this team and have been just like Kirill Kaprizov took that all the way to first star of last week for the NHL. Like they just have been on an insane run. Really, even since the calendar flipped to 2024.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, this is probably the most insane month of the year. I think this team really needed to find their mojo, and clearly in the month of February they did. You see wins against like Vegas, Edmonton, Vancouver, lost to Winnipeg, but then you go back and you win against Seattle. Like these are teams that are all playoff bound. And you see a lot of these like bigger, better teams. You're away for a couple of those and you go in and you show who this team really is down the stretch. And I think this team really defined who they are. It just shows you a lot about the momentum of this team right now. And I think I tweeted a little bit about it and I didn't really mention a lot of it, but this team has something going for them. And it makes me wonder what the future holds, especially with this month of March coming on. This is insane. There's a lot of what ifs, and hopefully we can answer them. We answered a lot of them in our last episode where we predicted that the month of February has to average. The team has to go out there and average at least 3 goals a night. And we said, at the point of that podcast, this team was in a weird gray area in the standings. It was. What is this team going to really have to play for in the month of February? Is it really going to add up to a playoff contention? And clearly, yes, the answer is yes. But also, they exceeded a lot of what we predicted and threw out there as over-unders or takes that we had. And I think, you probably took note of it and I lost it. But, this team is really buzzing right now. They have something going for them. It's so easy to hold on to that Carolina loss. But, man, everything else – this team is on one right now. They are a fun team to watch. I think that Vancouver game really set the tone for what this team is capable of. That game was not fun, if you can remember, before that turn on of goals. This team can fight through it, and I think that's kind of been the thing all year. There's been a lot of injuries. Spurgeon's out. You get all these guys are facing without their line mates, on a daily basis. And you're starting to see players like Chisholm getting brought up and a lot of different line combinations. But this team's still winning. And that's what's really important at the end of the month is that they exceeded a lot of the expectations, a lot of W's on the calendar. And now the month of March is as important as it should be. And in reality, you could have gone on there in the month of February and lost a couple of more games and really just skated off the ice slowly. But now the month of March really means the most here. And that's exactly what the vision was heading into the month of February, whereas how can we make the games in March the most important? And I think the Wild are in that spot right now where everyone matters going to the stretch. And boy, this is going to be one heck of a month. Everybody's in the Western Conference. Like, whoa, like this is it.
Yeah, buckle up. 7-2-1 with one game to play here in February. Those numbers that you mentioned, Zach, I did keep them. We put the over-under at 4 wins for the month because we just looked at the schedule and we're like, this is not going to be great. And the Wild won 7 games. You took the over. I said they will push. And so you get a point there. You also said that the Wild's, your benchmark was 3 goals per game. The Wild have scored 39 goals in 10 games. So even if they get shut out against Nashville, they have exceeded 3 goals per game for the entire month of February.
The 10-goal game just literally made the entire prediction.
I remember after that game was done, I was headed back home and I was like, that's going to prop that 3 goals per game. That's going to propel that for the month. But, to the Wild's credit, they still scored plenty of other goals throughout the month. As far as player of the month goes, obviously we talked about worthy candidates. Kirill Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson Ek, and Matt Boldy on another planet. But I think, as was alluded to, the fact that Kirill Kaprizov took home first star of the week for the NHL, I think that's got to be the tiebreaker.
Yeah, there's no question. I said Brock February because why not? It's literally his month. Like, what else am I supposed to say there? But yeah, obviously Kirill in my mind just blew out of the water. I think I look at that goal that he had against Seattle, the behind the net. I think it was Zuccarello. They just playing patty cake, and good things happen when he's buzzing. I think that goal's been done, by the way, like 2 or 3 more times. I swear. I wish someone would have clipped all of them. I think it happened against I think it was like LA in the COVID year. I swear. I'm like remembering his magical goal. Anyway, he's on one right now, and it's clear that this team is rallying around it. Obviously when you have Ek and Boldy supporting literally identical numbers as him, says a lot about like the top lines of this team. But also, like, there have been some games that the bottom 6 are really turning it up. Even against Carolina, we've seen Dewar get a goal. Like, there's a lot of magic here. And, it really, like, I'm just starting to think of, like, what it's going to look like if, players like a friend of the show, Brandon Duhaime goes. Like, that is going to tear me apart. I'm going to be so sad if that happens. But it just, at least, like, the bottom 6 guys are getting looks. I think. Yeah, they're seeing a lot more ice time. I swear, every time I'm watching these games, it's like, wow, the bottom 6 guys are out again. John Hines is throwing them out there. There's clearly a live balance of this team, and man, it's like everyone is generating the same amount of numbers. And then when your top 6 guys are consistently putting up numbers like Kirill is, even though he got the first star, like. It's good. This team's balanced right now. I think it just says a lot about like the momentum they have, and I think March coming up now, it's kick it in gear. You gotta win against Nashville. I mean, man, there's a lot of good games coming up.
There are a ton of good games coming up. Honorable mention to Marc-Andre Fleury, who was 4-1 in February. Philip Gustafsson also was 3-1-1, but Fleury with the 2.79 goals against average, the 908 save percentage, and he had an assist. So he gets an honorable mention there, but it's got to be Kirill. So congratulations to Kirill Kaprizov, multi-time winner of the Locked on Wild Player of the Month. Time to dive into that schedule. We'll take a look at the games. We'll take a look at how the Wild stack up. We'll set the over-under for what we expect for the month of March. That's all on the way as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Game Time. Folks, as the weather continues to improve, as we move through winter into spring. That leads us to the end of the hockey season, but the start of the Major League Baseball season, and shortly thereafter, summer concert season. And there is no better time to get great deals on your favorite artists at your favorite venues by going to Game Time and avoiding a lot of the stresses and hassles that come with buying tickets. You don't have to worry about having obstructed seat views because Game Time gives you the opportunity to see your view from your seat. You also know exactly what you're going to pay on your tickets because Game Time shows you all of the ticket fees right when you order the tickets so that you're not blindsided by anything when you hit the checkout line. All of that and so much more. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wilds. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Every day, we got a bonus for you as we will take a deeper look into tonight's matchup against the Nashville Predators. So pregame preview coming up for you here probably just after lunch. So make sure to check that out before tonight's puck drop. And then, of course, we will have another Locked On Wild postcast coming up for you after the game is done. It may be a little later than typical again because I am on double duty, but the doctor will see you. Dr. Topes will see you after the game is over. Again, I can't believe that I brought that into the world, but we're just going to run with it. Zach, let's look at this March schedule. What we have, the month starts with a big Saturday tilt against the St. Louis Blues on March 2nd. The Wild follow that up with a home date against the San Jose Sharks on the 3rd. Boy, you can really tell we're in high school tournament season at this point in the year.
Love it. I freaking love it. It's literally the best. Oh, it's the best. If you have a chance to go watch them. I don't even care if you went to high school, go to high school, go to those games. They're electric. I miss it so much being at college, but man, I'll be back there. We will be back there.
After that, the Wilds actually have off from Sunday to Thursday the 7th, where they play at Arizona, then at Colorado on Friday the 8th, home against Nashville on Sunday the 10th, home against Arizona on Tuesday the 14th, home against Anaheim on Thursday the 14th, then at St. Louis on March 16th, at Anaheim on March 19th, at Los Angeles on March 20th, then home against St. Louis on the 23rd, home against San Jose on the 28th, and home against Vegas on the 30th of the month. Zach, which games are the key games for you for this month?
Right away, the 3 against the Blues. This is the team that you are fighting against to get into that last spot. And I think, the Blues are vulnerable. I think right now they're playing the Oilers as we speak. They lost to Winnipeg the same night the Wild lost to the Hurricanes. So they kind of pushed there. But eventually and ultimately, the Blues are always the team the Wild are against for like the last 3 years. It's been amazing. I swear they should start a rivalry. If they don't even already have one, I think the NHL is pushing for Winnipeg, Minnesota, but as I go to Mizzou, and I'm in Missouri literally my entire life for these last 4 years, I have loved every second of the St. Louis, Minnesota series. I think these two teams are alike, obviously in the standings. But yeah, right away, you're in St. Louis on the 2nd on a Saturday. You're in there on the 16th on a Saturday, and then you host them on the 23rd, which is also a Saturday. So these weekend games are going to be fun to watch. Obviously the Blues are there in the same spot the Wild are. They're probably going to – I feel like they're selling. I think that's what the what the word is on the street. I don't know what's going on with them and what moves they're going to make. But, hey, the Wild need to take advantage and hop on those games. But another couple of games I'm looking at are you host San Jose twice. Those are absolutely must-wins. I think you really got to show up there and dominate those games. No questions. Then you go away and then home with Arizona. We all know how that one went when we were covering up in the press box. But then you went there last month and you proved who you were in Arizona, and now the Wild beat them. So they're split there. Got to win both of those. This is it. If you host San Jose twice and you go 1-1 with Arizona, oh wait, and then there's 1-1 with Anaheim. Like, these are 6 crucial games where those are almost all gimme. That have to be all gimme wins. By the way, you played in February. Basically, what you're telling me is those should be gimme wins. But by the way, you're playing right now. But yeah, man, I'm going off right now. But I think the 3 games against the Blues are obviously the most important. But then those 6 against the bottom feeders are also just easy pickings. You gotta take care of them.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. The key to those games against San Jose, Anaheim, and now with Arizona being to the point where they're like, yeah, we're taking a step back. You can't afford any slip ups. Like you can't afford, because you like 22 games left. You have to make up points. And you can do that if you hold your own against St. Louis in the 3 matchups that you talked about. If you hold your own against Nashville tonight and on Sunday the 10th. Like, you can make the points up. It's just you can't afford slip-ups in these other games against teams that are below you in the standings. Already saw that in the game before the All-Star break, in which the Wild lost to the Anaheim Ducks. So that's the phrasing, that's the messaging for this month, is you just can't afford any slip-ups. Now, if you go to Colorado and you lose that game, not the end of the world. If you host Vegas and you lose that game on Sunday, that's not the end of the world either. But when you have opportunities to go head to head against these teams you're playing, and you have opportunities to especially host teams that are below you in the standings, cannot afford any slip-ups.
Yeah, like what I think is really interesting is the games that matter the most are against the teams in the Central. Like, you can go to Vegas, you can go to San Jose and Anaheim, which you have to win those. But the ones you have to win, like, let's not overlook Nashville here. Like, we're not overlooking anything this month. Trust me, I think we've alliterated to that a lot. But I mean, St. Louis, those 3. But then you go, I mean, if you can win against Colorado, which I feel like the Wild haven't played them in so long. It's weird scheduling, but
it is very weird scheduling.
You also get like, and I think it'd be Nashville in like twice in 2 weeks or something like that, which is really interesting because they're also unstoppable right now.
I know.
And if you can somehow weather their storm or whatever they have going on, like they canceled the trip to the Sphere, like if that's what's going to fire your team up, by all means, go ahead, which clearly it has. I mean, you're there, you got to beat them in Nashville. Like, something's got to give with them. And then, yeah, man, these 2 games against the Ducks and the Coyotes, if you lose a couple of those, it's really going to be heartbreaking for this fan base. Well, as of I know it right now, I don't even know what the common like ideology is with this fan base. If they want to go to the playoffs, if they want to sell, what is Marat going to do when he gets here? I'm just going to call him Marat, right? I'm not even going to try to make a fool out of myself.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
That's his first name. That's perfectly fine to just go with that.
Right. It's going to be a fun month of like a lot of cool narratives of, trades are going to happen around the league. We'll see what St. Louis does, what they're like. There's a lot of these teams that can start to get rid of some pieces and the Wild can take advantage of, which I feel like the Wild are going to buy a little bit here. I don't know. Hey, am I like teasing the next segment? Like,
I think you just put a professional tease out there for some predictions for what we see in the month of March, which includes the trade deadline.
Yeah.
We will talk about that as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wilds. after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is also brought to you today by Sleeper. And with the fact that the NHL season is pushing towards the final playoff push, the final couple of months of the season, you can still win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked on NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey. Because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, Joel Eriksson will continue their torrid pace and go more or less than their Sleeper projections for categories such as goals, assists, plus minus, and more. It is so easy. You can set your lineup in under 60 seconds. And fans of the NHL can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, and college football on Sleeper. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. One final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Seth Topal joined by Zach Zeman today. And Zach, as we talk about predictions for the month of March, let's start with your tease before the break about what you think the Wild will do at the trade deadline. You're in a buying mood.
I'm in a buying mood. I feel like you can't call yourself a Wild fan or like anyone who follows the team without being like, let's make some moves. I've never in my life rooted for my team or any team that I cover to not make it interesting in the postseason. I don't think you can call yourself a Wild fan if you want this team to sell. It's unfortunate this fan base I've seen is just like up and down with it sometimes. But I mean, I think the Wild are in a spot where the message has been there all year. If we are there on the doorstep, we're probably going to try to make our way into the room. And I think that it's clear this team, to me, is signing Murat. Like there are subtly some moves. The Fleury's probably going to stay here. Is that like confirmed? Yep. I haven't checked that today. I've been kind of busy, but it's like if you're like making these subtle moves where it's not like a confirmed we're selling yet, then you might as well start buying. And I think that obviously it's going to take some games in the month of March to try to really figure out where this team lies. But at the end of the day, I hope they buy. I really don't know what to extent they're going to buy, but I hope it's something where it's like the message gets through enough from the front office down and these players can start to rally against it or with it. Sorry. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm feeling. I feel optimistic.
Okay. Yeah. So there are two sides to this. There is the side of those that are like, well, with the team playing well, why not go for it? The Western Conference, the wildcard picture is pretty muddled. There are a bunch of teams fighting for position. So you have that on one side. You have the other side of the coin that has kind of been where I'm at and where many Locked on Wild fans have been, many listeners, many Wild fans. And just that it's like it's going to be tough for this team to go up against the likes of the
like
Jets,
Vancouver and
Vancouver,
and
Dallas,
all these teams.
Colorado.
I get that, but I just don't know how if you're there almost you just go, okay, we're done. Like I don't think that's ever a mentality of an NHL franchise.
No.
And if you have a shot to go up against one of those teams for 7 games, by all means, I think you're doing anything you can to get into that playoff push.
Yeah.
To get into those playoffs.
People just don't want to see the same things that we've seen the last few seasons.
At least you've been making the playoffs consistently. Some of these teams haven't seen the playoffs in so long, and I think the Wild are notorious for that streak that they have going of making the first round, regardless of it losing every time. At least you're still there, and you give yourself a chance to go further.
Columbus. Columbus. The last time they went to the playoffs, they beat the Lightning, I think. So
yes, that was electric. I can tell you exactly where I was in that game 4. I'm not kidding. That was the craziest thing I have seen in a long time, and congrats to them. But the Wild haven't been to the second round, and so hey, maybe they're ahead of the Wild. You never know.
So, by the deadline, who do we think ends up taking? Who do we think ends up taking the Player of the Month home?
So I saw this Kaprizov hype. I'm just gonna pick someone different because obviously it's not that fun to pick Kaprizov when he's literally been tearing it up all year. I'm picking Boldy. I think Boldy has what it takes to like really change the momentum of these games. I think these games against St. Louis are always physical, always tough. It just comes down to who can really change the game. Obviously, Kirill can, Fleury can if he tries to fight Binnington again. But hey, I think Matt Boldy, little sleeper in this month.
I'm going Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yes, you took the bit and you ran with it. That one went over my head. It went way over my head.
I thought about that earlier today as I was sitting at my desk when I was trying to figure out who I was going with this month. We haven't given a ton of love to the goalies because they've been.
You always do.
I like to, as the Locked On, our friends at Locked On Senators always say, it's a goalie friendly show. So I'm going to go with Marc-Andre Fleury. I think he has a couple of performances this month that wow us. He's done it this year already. He's had a few games in which people have been like, myself included, have been like, okay, including my biggest prediction of the month. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready. I love it.
Marc-Andre Fleury is going to walk into Colorado and steal a win against the Avs. Because all of the games this month, probably the least that we expect because it's in Colorado and it's the Avs. You have to go up against the top levels of that lineup over and over and over and over again. It's not an easy proposition.
Never.
But that's been, if you have watched the Minnesota Wild this season, there have been many instances in which we've counted this team out. Me have counted this team out, and they have fought back in. And so my bold prediction for the month, Zach, is that the Wild are going into Colorado and Marc-Andre Fleury is picking them up that win. How's that for bold?
I love it. That's Marc-Andre Fleury right there for you. Oh man, you took it and I didn't even recognize it. So I'm happy the bit is still in play and I'm all for it. I'm going to be legit watching that. I think he's an absolute beauty. Like, you don't often have players or goalies in this league that have the ability to just go in there and steal games. I mean, that Pittsburgh game last month and his whole ceremony was tremendous. Like, that was his game. Like, he's not losing that. Like, there are going to be some games in this month where, like, okay, Fleury's not losing that. You think he's going to lose in St. Louis? Like, no, I think they're starting him on purpose, right? You have to set the tone there. Hartman's got to come out again in that fire. Like, these games are going to be insane. Like, Hartman has got to like get in Binnington's head, and who knows if Hofer's got it as the backup spot. Who knows those goalie matchups? But it's going to be interesting. And those are literally the only games circled on this count, as they all should be. But for me, the ones against St. Louis are the ones that are going to matter the most.
The Blues brawls, as
so fun.
As they will come to be known.
Those games are always so fun.
They are. They usually have a little tinge of craziness to them, which we want. So more of that, please. But Zach, the only other thing I had for today, so it's 13 games this month. The Wild play 8 of them at home. And so what I'm going to do is set the over-under for the month at 7.5.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Oh my goodness. I literally was going to go on my screen, but you want me to predict it? Okay. I'm saying you're going to win at least 8. I don't see this team losing to Anaheim, Arizona, because you already did to Arizona, and the Sharks are abysmal.
Yeah.
What matters is stealing 2 against St. Louis, which the team you're battling the most, going into Colorado and ripping a win out of their hands. Makar on fire. Like, he's literally he would be the leading scorer on a boatload of teams this year.
Yeah,
that
like
team
25
is tough.
other teams.
Exactly. Like, it's insane. I think they win at least 8. I'm going with over. I like the over. It's dumb betting the under, especially in this type of month where the Wild are in dire need of a spot. Obviously, I think the mentality is you're going to the playoffs and you're going to do anything you can to make sure that happens. Going over 8. What about you?
I think I'm going over 2.
Yeah.
This has been a notably more successful stretch for this team, and it coincides with it's been more than just like a few games here and there. 7-2-1 heading into one final game against Nashville. You know, if you win that game, you're going into March pretty high, and then it's just go get the thing. So I'll say over 2, and we will of course reassess as we move through the rest of the month. Can
we keep the 3-goal average going? I think that's a really
certainly
good
help.
benchmark. I think it's good. I think it's a good benchmark for this team. You know, a lot of these games are going to be interesting, and just depends on how gritty you come out. Get 3 a night, you're probably going to win. So, help your goals.
So in February, games in which the Wild scored 3 or more goals: 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 4-1, 5-1, 6-1.
It's right there in front of you.
So 3 goals and prosper.
If you get 3 goals per game, you're 100% getting more than 7.5 wins. 100%.
Yeah.
So
we'll see.
We'll
see how it plays out. But that's all we got for you today here. So make sure to hit the like button on today's video. And subscribe if you have not already to join the ever-growing Locked On Wild listening audience. Make sure to also follow us on your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got new content for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.